you for joining. On behalf of LTech and Better Cloud, I welcome you to this session, which is covering managing the life cycle of a Google Apps user with FlashPanel. My name is Jason Eder, and I'm from LTech, and joining me today from Better Cloud is Eli Winderbaum. And I see a lot of familiar names here attending, and just wanted to again thank you for taking the time away from your busy day to learn more about FlashPanel. Next slide, please. And before I hand it over to Eli, who is going to be in charge of most of this today, I just wanted to quickly run through the agenda. We'll be doing welcoming, as you can obviously tell right now. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about Better Cloud to familiarize you if you're not familiar already. And then we'll actually be doing a demonstration. And we'll be talking a little bit more about some next steps, what you need to do after the demonstration. And of course, throughout the entire session, we'll be taking your questions. There we go. So the first thing, now what you should see now is a poll question that comes up on your screen. It'll say quick poll. Tell us about your organization. Feel free to just enter how you'll, what applies to you, and then we'll be able to read that and go to the next slide. Okay, it looks like about 50% of you are in small, medium businesses, 25% of you are enterprise businesses, and 25% of you are nonprofits. Excellent. Well, I greatly appreciate that information, and we'll make sure to steer the rest of the demonstration towards that. Okay, great. Next slide, please. Also wanted to quickly give you an overview of who Better Cloud is, which showcases both FlashPanel, which is what we're going to talk about today, and also the Google Guru. If you haven't visited googleguru.com, that's GOOGLEGOORU.com, I do highly recommend you do. Better Cloud has put together some great demonstrations, and I find it personally a very useful location for tutorials and more information on Google Apps. They're always keeping it up to date, very close to any iterations that's happening in Google Apps, so I highly recommend you take a look at that. Next slide, please. So before I hand it over to Eli, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about FlashPanel. From my own personal standpoint and from LTech's standpoint. FlashPanel is designed with the mindset of enterprise first. They follow and have adapted the SSAE 16 standards. Should your organization operate in multiple countries and or regions, they comply with and have been certified as a safe harbor vendor. They are trustee certified as well to give you the final assurance their site is safeguarding your personal information, and they value your privacy. When I'm asked why do we so strongly advocate FlashPanel, I typically explain that from a former Exchange admin who is now a Google Apps champion, from their standpoint, there seems to be a missing ability to template or standardize the onboarding process. I find that FlashPanel presents the global administration functionality you're looking for. Additionally, it provides a holistic view of your Google Apps domain, making it simple to quickly monitor, automate, and act upon any necessary administrative tasks. It's built on the Google Apps engine. They have adopted the Google mindset as well, where you pay for a service that is continuously enhancing itself and integrating within the application suite. And I look at FlashPanel the very same way I do as Google Apps. So that same low cost, new iteration 6 months from now will interact in a way that simply you can't comprehend how you lived without it 6 months prior. So they're extremely good with that. In short, if a customer asks me what the best next step application to enhance the Google Apps experience is, I say FlashPanel. Similarly, if prospecting client asks me the same question in the pre-sales process, I give them the same answer, FlashPanel. In my experience, FlashPanel is a win-win solution and should be considered a must-have for your domain. Throughout the rest of this demonstration, there will be some polls, so it'll be automatic, it'll pop up. Please do fill them out, and of course, located at near the bottom of the little control panel for your GoToWebinar little box box you see. Make sure to ask questions if you have some. Okay. Eli, thank you so much for coming in today and joining. I will pass it over to you, and again, really appreciate it.
So we're figuring out an audio issue right now. Looks like Eli, we don't hear you if you're speaking yet, so you may need to mute yourself and unmute yourself. And as we're figuring that out, just want to remind everyone that if you're a current LTech customer, we're offering a special promotion at the end of this webinar for our current customers for FlashPanel. So stay tuned so you can hear about that promotion.
Hello, this is Eli. I moved over to mic and speakers. Are you able to hear me now?
We hear you just fine, Eli.
Okay, there might be a little bit of typing noise. Hopefully I won't have to type too much, but looks like our telephone went out for a little bit. So I was speaking before for about 30 seconds, so I'll redo that whole thing. Give me a minute here to get back in presentation mode. Okay, thank you. What I was saying was, thank you, Jason, for having us here today. I recognize a lot of the names on the list here who are attending, so welcome back to some of our webinars. And for some of the new LTech customers and hopefully future customers, we're really excited to be speaking with you and teaching you about FlashPanel today. So as you know, just to start off, as Jason did mention, the fact of having a rapidly evolving product. Basically, in the old, Microsoft Exchange days, you get what you get for a couple of years, and then you have to upgrade. But with Google Apps, you get version now, and we are working as hard as Google to present you with some really great functionality. Of course, updated as often as possible. So, in fact, that's what we'll talk about now: the history of FlashPanel. When we started and launched FlashPanel 14 months ago in the Google Apps Marketplace, it's hard to believe how quickly it's gone by. We've actually been able to achieve quite a bit. So the day we launched, these little logos here, you can see we have basically user management, groups management, OU and shared contacts, as well as Gmail settings. And you can see as we go across the different Google Apps services, in the past 14 months, we've added both enhancements to existing functionality as well as released even more functionality and enhancements around new Google Apps services, which includes Google Drive, Google Sites, and Calendar. So that's where we are today. In only 14 months, our team has grown from 8 employees, and now we're at 42 in just this short time. So we're really excited. We have over 25 dedicated full-time developers working on FlashPanel as our only product. So you can bet that this is what we are focusing on all of our efforts on. If we look towards the future, you can see that we're moving even wider and even deeper within each individual service. So actually in the next couple of months, we will release Google Plus functionality, the ability to view public sharing settings, as well as all the way to the right, the third-party apps auditing. And we know that this is a very important thing to find out what is being shared and how your users are basically accepting different permissions. We also have plans to add the mobile device management as well as Chrome management. So a quick question now would be, now that you know about FlashPanel, hopefully you've heard of it, we'd like to know if you've already installed FlashPanel.
Entering response, it's about 50-50.
Okay, great. We will have instructions on how to install at the very last slide, but if you're interested, it's very easy. flashpanel.com/install will take you right to the marketplace. Okay, so now I'm going to go over a quick feature overview. These are often the ones that we're highlighting. This is really just the surface tip of the iceberg because we've had 14 months to put in a lot of different functionality, but these we found are most popular. So right off the bat in the home page, we have a really good dashboard that'll give you information up to date. This is the kind of place you go in once a day to look at different drive sharing, how many licenses you have available, how much storage people have on their account, and maybe some quick directory information. So one of the main features of FlashPanel is its ability to manage your users and your entire directory for that matter using one tool apart from the Google admin panel. So a really big upgrade here is the ability to provision a user in a number of ways. So we know that this takes a lot of time, both provisioning and deprovisioning a user. So you have actually two ways to do this. You can do this one by one, and actually you can see here on the right-hand side, it'll actually ask you information about the email address, also as well as the contact information, org unit, groups, email signature. Basically, the idea is to create a user once and have that user be a part of an OU, and then apply settings to that particular OU. So very easy. The other way is you can actually bulk provision or bulk edit users using a Google spreadsheet. And this is a really great way to manage multiple users at once, especially if you're maybe over 25 users, even for ones that are just 10 users. The ability to edit all of the rich profile data all at one time and then upload it back to FlashPanel. So this is just a quick screenshot of what the spreadsheet looks like. You can see it's very simple, one row per user. And then kind of bringing it together with all of your user management is the ability to have a few more settings applied to these particular users. So definitely our number one feature is the ability to manage a user's email signature. Not only can you set an email signature for a particular user, a group, an OU, or even everybody on the domain, but the fact that you can enforce it. So it's very important to realize that the Gmail settings of a particular user can be edited by that user at any time. In fact, when they compose a message, they can always remove that right as they write it. However, as the administrator, you have the ability to update this on a daily basis and enforce it, and we found that after a couple days of replacing their signatures with butterflies or whatever it might be, they usually give up. So you can see at the last step, you can apply weekly, you can do it daily, or every 3 months. This is a very common one-step, two-step, three-step process throughout FlashPanel. Same goes for reset passwords. To make your compliance department or security department happy, you may want to create a password policy and enforce that. Maybe your executives get once every 3 months and the rest of the company gets once every 6 months. And you can see that same three-step process here. So the Apps Butler is actually one of our favorite tools. We had an older iteration of this in our last product, and it basically is a chat bot. It lives in your Google Chat, and it allows you to look up different users, shared contacts, groups, and OUs. And as a user, let's get a bigger shot here, you can actually, maybe when you're writing or composing a message, you type in a group such as New York at maybe it's bettercloud.com, and there's about 15 people here, but I'm not quite sure everybody who is there is actually in the group. So before you send a message, you can just double check here and look at every single user that's a part of that group. You can also look at user information to see phone numbers, very quick way, especially for maybe a receptionist to get information about their colleagues. So I think we can all agree that one of the most difficult parts of managing your domain is the groups management. First off, the fact that you need to go to a different interface, the Google Groups interface, and there's definitely some restrictions around who you can manage, how often, and definitely there's limitations on bulk settings and editing. So again, we have two ways. You can create a group guided, kind of a guided tour. You can basically mirror these off of old ones, or you can bulk edit the group settings. So this is how you create a group. It asks you some of the basic permissions. In step 2, you select the owners. In step 3, you review. And then after that, you can add those members very, very easily. So this is how you would add a specific member to a group or a group to a member. It's very easy to do both. And then you can do it in bulk. So basically, you would select your spreadsheet that you export, And all of the different group settings, I believe there's about 30 or 35 of them, whether it be what level of spam moderation that you'd like to have, the max message size in kilobytes, or even who can post, who can view, visible in the directory. All of those things are all managed via a spreadsheet, which is very, very simple, and I can show you some of that when we click into the application. So moving away from the directory, let's talk a little bit about assets, and of course the most important are your Drive documents, spreadsheets, presentations, and so on. So within FlashPanel, basically what happens is it does a sync on all of your users and all of the documents owned by that user. And what it does is it will report all of the metadata to you, which you can then filter upon to find out who is sharing their documents publicly, if they're sharing with a particular domain, and you can really find out some pretty important information. And again, I can show you what that looks like in the application. What is kind of the next step there is not only can you view this information, you can take action on that. You can actually change the sharing settings from public to private. You can add a collaborator, remove a collaborator, and even as the administrator, you have the ability to click on that document and view it if you'd like to see what it looks like. So you really have a lot of power here as an admin. You may want to delegate this responsibility to someone who is responsible just for document, asset, and compliance, which is possible, very similar to roles and privileges in the admin panel. So to take it even a step further, we can create what I like to call as a proactive approach to basically preventing a user from sharing a specific way. So the way that Google has it set up is that it's either sharing outside the domain or not. But what if you'd like some people to share outside the domain, but others you would not like them to? So basically you can create a sharing policy. You decide who it's for in step 1. In step 2, you apply the different settings, whether it be this user or this group can share externally, public, not public. You can get very granular there, and you could even whitelist and blacklist certain domains. And then at the very bottom, you see it says automatically correct sharing violations. This is what we call auto compliance. So imagine that you have a user who is sharing incorrectly. If you have a policy set up on that person, it'll actually revoke and return the document to its original sharing setting after the policy has taken place. So it's very powerful, especially if you're doing this on a daily basis. Should make your job a little bit easier. So this is what it would look like once you have a number of sharing policies set up together. And then reporting. I think that we can all agree on this phone call that reporting is something that is key to administration. You really want to know how your users are adopting Google Apps and also adapting to the different Google Apps services. So from here, we took some best practices from other reporting software, and you can basically drag and drop any of these column fields here on the bottom left and build up to 100 different columns with information you'd like to see about a particular user. We also have information about groups, information about documents, and then at the top you can filter. So this is a report of who on the domain is being delegated. That is a delegated mailbox. So from here you can see delegated is true, and you would export that simply to a Google spreadsheet, and from there you can take action or update that information. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Eli. That was excellent. So here we go. We have another poll coming up. So we have people that are very interested in the Google Drive sharing policies so far. Let's see. Yep, absolutely. So Google Drive sharing policies, Eli.
Okay,
Absolutely the most popular.
all right, I'll make sure to highlight that. That was an overwhelming favorite. Okay. I think we've got one more poll question.
Yep. and definitely security. So that falls into play very nicely with the previous question. Excellent. So Eli, thank you so much for going through that slide deck. Ladies and gentlemen, what Eli is going to do now is actually take you into FlashPanel to show you what it looks like, and to make it a little easier, if you're unfamiliar with what FlashPanel looks like, he's going to walk you through going from Gmail into FlashPanel and how that works. Thanks again, Eli.
Alrighty. We heard from some people that there might be some echo when it comes to my computer, and then Jason speaking, so apologize for that, but it seems like my phone wasn't working today. All right, great. So everyone should still be able to see my screen. I've got FlashPanel open. If you don't see FlashPanel, definitely open up, let us know through the questions there. So I'll make sure to highlight on some of the things that you mentioned you'd like to see, such as drive sharing policies. So actually, why don't we just start off with that? But as you can see, we have the application divided in a few different ways. The home screen, the directory, this is of course your users, your groups, OUs, and shared contacts. You've got Google Apps, this is Drive, Sites, and Calendars. Like I mentioned, this is where Google Plus will eventually be. We have reporting. We also have the different tools which you can apply, the password reset, as well as the signatures, which I'll definitely make sure to cover over the next few minutes. So let's just dive right into what everyone wanted to see, which is the sharing policies. So before I get there, it's important to understand how the Explorer works. So from here, you can actually filter multiple different parameters to look for the document that you'd like to find. So from here, exposure is probably the #1 most used. Let's take a look at all public docs. So if we're to click here, it looks like we've only one, so that's a pretty good sign. From here, you can take action and change the owner, add a collaborator, remove a collaborator, and my favorite, the ability to remove the public and change it to a private setting, or at least on the domain, make sure it's safe. What you couldn't see there is you can actually bulk select multiple or even all of the ones that you have below. So let's take a look at that. So we can own by a user. We've got Dwight. And from here, you can obviously manage many of the documents at one time. If you'd like, you can also combine filters. This one's also really good. Again, with doc size, the last time it was updated, the type of document. You can also look for Google Docs, all files, whatever it might be. There's one really good one that you cannot combine a filter with, but you can find out a lot of information. So from here, if you wanted to look at what documents were being shared with someone at an @gmail.com address. So from here, it's obvious that this is probably not work-related. Perhaps it was a mistake, but you can also put in your competitor to see who's sharing with your competitor. You'd be surprised to find what things that we've heard from some customers. So to take the sharing policy a little bit further and explain how that works, like I mentioned, you can do one for everybody on the domain. This one is a bit restrictive as it doesn't allow you to do anything, but the user will override the everyone. So that's the level of how it works. So if we were to look at Andy Bernard, we can say that this particular user is not allowed to share public or with a link or external. However, we can always add in a whitelist here. So someone like LTech, we trust them, we can obviously add LTech there. However, if we wanted them to always be allowed to share externally, but not with a particular domain, we can put in Gmail. And that would be a very easy one to put in there, maybe a competitor, to be certain that a document won't be shared with that particular domain. So the settings over here, you have a few settings. One, you can automatically correct the sharing violation, which means that, unfortunately, the way that the framework is today, there's no way to actually prevent a user from sharing a document in the first place. That's just how Google works. But we have the next best thing, which is FlashPanel will sync, and your sharing policy will basically be enforced. And when that happens, it will remove that sharing, bring it back to compliance. The other way to do that is to uncheck that. This is for companies that generally trust their employees a lot, or perhaps have a really high level of user education, maybe in part due to LTech's good education program, but you can create different notifications. So actually your end users, this is an important time to note this, we are logged in as a super administrator. Dwight Schrute is a super administrator under Google's eyes. However, every single user does have the ability to log into FlashPanel and have very limited access. It's basically the same as Google Contacts, but you've got access to shared contacts, group information, and then, if you like, you can allow users to self-edit their own profile, which is off by default. But on the end user view, you can have each user go in and check the documents that they're shared with, they've shared out, and then you can actually send an email every time that someone shares incorrectly. Just a nice friendly reminder to say, hey, you shared in a way that you shouldn't have. You should probably go in and take a look and make sure that that is the right way. So with the sharing policies, there's a lot you can do. Obviously, there's a lot more we can do to provide you with better search parameters and things like that. Something that we certainly do have planned is the regular expressions. That's something that's been asked about us quite a bit. Being able to type in maybe a Social Security type number with 3 dashes and the different numbers, being able to find that information. So that's a planned enhancement over the next couple of months. If you have any questions about drive sharing policies, I've got my colleague Eliza here. She is an expert on drive sharing, so feel free to ask those questions, and then we can talk about them towards the end of the presentation. So that was Google Apps drive sharing. You've also got the ability to view all your sites as well as calendars. So if you do want to create a calendar and make it public, you could even manage the different calendar resources on your domain, which is pretty nice. Let's move over to some of the tools because the email signatures and reset password are often requested here. So again, it's just this 3-step process. You don't actually need to type in any password just to require a password on next sign-in. In step 2, you've got the option to manually put in a user at a time. You can type in an org unit up here if you like, or go ahead and just add everybody on the domain. In step 3, you decide when you'd like it to apply, either now or to create a policy, create schedule, and you can put in every 3 or 6 months or whatever it is you'd like. So quite simple there. Our favorite email tool would be the signatures, without a doubt. You can start from scratch and basically put in different. These are more or less mail merge fields if you're familiar with that, or you don't have to start from scratch. You can start with a basic one, or maybe one that you've been working on. There's the guru that Jason was mentioning before. What will happen is, as long as your rich profile data is filled out, it will basically search and replace all of these fields. In step 2, you decide who you'd like it to apply to. And in step 3, like I mentioned, you can apply this on a daily basis if you like, which is pretty helpful. So about filling out that rich profile data, this goes back to the directory information. So one of the things that you can do in the directory is actually bulk update your users. And we showed you a quick screenshot of that, but I'd like to highlight how to get there and what it looks like. So you click bulk update users. You would click this export to users to spreadsheet button. I've done that just for the convenience of time, and it'll export as a user directory. That's how it'll look. And what you should see here is all the users on the domain and one per row. Basically, you've got the ability to update your first name, last name, require a new password on next sign-in. You can go ahead and suspend or restore a user. It's as simple as that. And you can get all this information by hovering over row number 3, and it'll give you instructions on what to do. You can also hide or show a particular user in the directory. And what's great is you can actually bulk add groups to a particular user using this format here. If you'd like to update your organizational unit structure, you can do so from here. This is a nice way to do that quickly. We find OUs are often underutilized or never used at all. So if you do have any questions about OUs, I'm sure that Jason and his team are dying to teach you about them. They're really great both for turning services on and off in Google and for using FlashPanel. They're very, very helpful. You can actually force a photo URL for a user, a photo that would appear, up here for Dwight if we had a picture for him. So you can actually force that upload, and all the blue stuff. This is the rich profile data that I was speaking about the signatures. So make sure that this is all filled out. Of course, Michael probably wishes he was everybody's manager, In fact, he is. And you can just make those changes, look for the spreadsheet here, wherever it is, and then update those users. So very simple to make changes to a couple hundred, couple thousand users, or just a couple dozen at one time. So that was for the email signatures. So we talked reset password, email signature, a few more things in bulk that you can do, which we have groups. So not only can you create groups, but you can also manage your groups in bulk. And what you can manage is particularly the settings for each one. So we've got the group directory. We'll open that one up. And rather than having the different members exported, it gives you all the different settings. So this actually prevents you from having to go into the Google Groups interface. You can just do all of that right from here. And you can see if we hover over, we've got the different values that you could be using here. So this goes on and on. In fact, this show in the global address list, this one's actually not available in the Google Groups interface, only available via API. So you can see all this different information. And for some of you that are often adding users, you can add users or members to a group in bulk in this very last column. Pretty helpful there. So maybe just another minute or two, then we're going to go to questions. But I do want to mention that we do have the ability for access control. And this is just like roles and privileges in the Google admin panel. So from here, if you would like to give access to a particular user who is not a super admin, perhaps you've set up a help desk, you can actually create a particular one here. You can, let's say, create a new one, give it a name. And you can see on a very granular level, you can allow view only. You can allow different ability to create users, suspend, delete, or just editing. And then down here, we have the drive management, email and calendar tools. So a good example is as the admin, maybe it's not your job to create the email signature. Why don't you hand this over to the director of marketing? All you need to do is give them this one checkbox, add their name below here, and they will have access to just the email signature portion of FlashPanel. And for them, it's very easy to just, from Gmail, click on the More dropdown. We should be number 1 here. Click on FlashPanel, and they will be loaded. They will see that their version of FlashPanel and what they can do, which is pretty great. So I think we covered quite a few things. Eliza, were there any pressing matters, things that people wanted to see in the application?
If you could go over signature policies a little bit and how to create them and break them up depending on either a blended group or just apply it to a few users.
Okay, so let's take a look at our org unit. So depending on how you have your OU set up, that's usually how you're going to want to set up your email signatures. If you're a multinational company, you may want one for each country. If you have different departments, you may want one for each department. But let's go simple and just look at our sales group here. So again, within email signatures, you can create a signature here. You can decide exactly what information you'd like to see. You can upload a image. You can hyperlink it to your social media if you'd like. And then actually, if you click Preview Signature here, should show up. So you can see that this will show you if this user has that information already filled out. A common question here is, can we use custom fields? So custom fields is something that we have already on a one user by one user basis. Unfortunately, it's not available in the signatures, but over the next few months, we will be able to offer you editing custom fields in bulk and then applying it to all of your users. So in step 2 is, like it mentions, who you'd be selecting here. So we saw that we had the sales OU. These 3 dots suggest that this is an organizational unit, and we are going to use the signature only for people in the sales OU. And like I mentioned, you can click apply. That will actually update what you see here in Gmail settings immediately. This is what we currently have here. But if I were to set this, this would override it and take precedence over it. But again, your user can always change it. But the real good thing about signatures is the ability to enforce this on a daily basis. So as part of the enterprise plan, you have the ability to do so. Hope that covered it. I think we had one last question about reports. Let me just show you how to get in there so you can build your own reports or use our canned reports. So canned reports, we do recommend a few here. One that I really like is the ability to see who is forwarding their email to users beyond the domain. So we've already built it for you. The second one down, email forwarding report. Email forwarding report, we can see we have full name, email, email forwarding to. Those will be the 3 columns. And we have as a filter, email forwarding enabled equals true. So that will be, if I click run export, that will go to your Google Drive. You can find it here, email forwarding report, generated by FlashPanel. And then when you open it up, you'll see something like this. And in the last column, looks okay, looks okay, looks okay. And then we've got 4 different forwarding addresses of email addresses that we are not familiar with. So this is something that you'd want to run maybe a couple times a month if you'd like. Alrighty, I think that's it for the current demo. Of course, we can go more in depth, at a later date. But I think we're going to hand this back over to Jason, and we might take some questions. So let's open up the questions tab here.
Thank you very much. There were 2 specific questions that I wanted to point out. You may have touched on them, and also we were responding to the people as well. But Eli, 2 questions. I'll just throw them right out there. One was, can you bulk delete groups in the bulk group feature? And the second was, can you create and manage different signatures from different orgs within the domain?
Good question. So the first one was groups, the ability to delete groups. Currently, we don't really allow you to bulk delete anything, and the reason being that it's a little bit scary, to be honest. We are putting in, I think, a different system. We have debated this, whether if you want to bulk delete users, but of course, if you have one kind of rogue super admin or delegated admin, who knows what sort of damage that person can do, especially with an application that they may not be familiar with. So currently, we don't have the ability to delete really anything in bulk. However, you can, I believe you can no, I think that's unfortunately not able to. The second question being about email signatures, yes, I did forget to mention that FlashPanel is allows for multi-domain management, or MDM. You can basically filter upon those different subdomains, and yes, any domain that you are an owner of, you have the ability to create an email signature for. However, there is an API restriction and limitation on if you do apply it to one user, and that user has multiple email addresses at multiple subdomains. Unfortunately, it does not propagate to each subdomain that user owns. That is a Google limitation on the API, unfortunately. So that answers it, and also brings up another just thing to note.
Great, thanks, Eli. There was another question regarding pricing. And I know that this is something that's coming up pretty much on the hour here. It's certainly something that we wanted to talk about. That Eli, please feel free to step in if I'm not saying anything correct here. Mentioning that we have enterprise, small business, and also nonprofit. Had there been education customers as well? There are different tiers of pricing for all 3. And be happy to discuss with you guys some of the different pricing models that are out there. Feel free to reach out to us directly should you have more questions, and we can definitely go forward with that.
Great. I think we're going to address that in the next slide about some of the next steps.
Yeah.
Maybe we can still continue with questions, but we can show you now.
Exactly. So right off the bat, as you can see, number 2, if you'd like to try it out and you haven't yet, please feel free to. We can give you a 30-day trial of FlashPanel, the paid features for free for 30 days. Make sure you do step 1 first, which is just go to flashpanel.com/install, and then you'll be able to do that. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me directly. I know a lot of you on there, so do feel free to reach out to me with your questions. If they're more specific to FlashPanel that I can't answer, I'll reach out to Eli and his team, and we'll make sure to accommodate you guys to the best of our abilities. There was another question, Eli, if it's okay to jump into that.
Sure.
About do you have specific privileges that you would recommend that you give someone in a help desk role using FlashPanel?
Sure. Why don't I open up FlashPanel and just show you? So each help center is its own thing, really. I mean, depending on how small or large you are. I know there's a domain out there attending about 1,400 users, and I know that they've got a help desk of about 10 users. Usually, it's best practices to have well, first off, at least one super admin, because you may want someone as a backup in case you're out sick or on vacation to do anything that you might want to be able to do. So I would recommend at least 2 super admins. One might be the CEO, but make it very clear if they don't know what they're doing, hey, don't do anything in there. But when it comes to there, we do actually automatically populate a few of them. We have an administrator. This is basically someone who is not a super administrator, who has more or less everything you can do in FlashPanel, but they cannot go into the Google Admin panel. So that is something, in terms of actually deleting your Google Apps account completely or getting, actually shutting down completely, they can't do that because they can't log into the admin panel. However, they can do whatever they like in FlashPanel. So we call that basically a delegated administrator, although we call it administrator here. Another good role would be someone on the help desk. So they basically are just creating users, resetting passwords, deprovisioning users, things like that. That's actually one thing I forgot to mention, which was actually show the deprovision workflow. And that's in tools, in user tools. And the deprovision user is basically the best practices you would go through when it's time to, when a user has been terminated or is about to be terminated. So looks like we'll choose Pam here, unfortunately. We'll go through here, and as you can see already, this is a big step forward from the Google Admin panel. Google Admin panel, you're clicking in one section, clicking in another section. We've brought everything to the surface right for you. So, getting started, it basically prompts you with, would you like to hide this user, yes or no? You can go ahead. That user will be hidden. That means users won't see them in the directory. Would you like to reset the user password, yes or no? And as you go from left to right, you can create an auto reply, an email delegation. We'll be adding email forwarding here shortly. And you've got Drive, Sites, and Calendar. Obviously, this is the most important thing you'd want to do, is transferring document ownership, because if you do delete the user, their documents will be deleted as well. So often, to answer about the help desk, you may want one person just provisioning and deprovisioning, or if you're big enough, one person just resetting passwords, another provisioning, another deprovisioning. That's definitely a really great thing to do. You may also want to just give one person access to reports, whether it be a statistician at your company, an analyst. They may want to find out different things about Google Apps. We had one more question come in that we can see here. It was about reporting, actually, and it was about automating or scheduling the reporting. And I know Salesforce does this. We love it, and we're definitely going to implement that. Basically, what that is the ability to create a report, and rather than run it immediately, you can actually run it, and it would be another option that says, schedule this to be run once a week, once a month, and email to these people. So that is certainly something that's coming down the line.
Excellent.
Jason, any more questions that you're seeing on your side?
I think that'll sum it up. We went 2 minutes over, but it looks like everybody stayed on. That's excellent. Hopefully that's a big indicator that everybody is quickly running to install FlashPanel as quickly as possible to make their lives better. So
the one last sorry to cut you off. The one last thing is our help center. We have, like I mentioned, a large team here dedicated only to FlashPanel. We are not a reseller business. We love working with LTech because they honestly really know what they're doing. They're really great with deployments, really great with education and training, but also they have great support. So we had to match them in some way. So we have our own support team. You can actually submit requests straight to us. If you'd like, you can submit requests straight to LTech. But we do have a full knowledge base, community. You can put in feature requests. We have dedicated an entire team. And while we're on it, if you like to, see a future webinar, very, even more in depth, perhaps, or maybe a colleague missed this one, you'd like them to see it. First off, I think Jason is recording this.
Yep.
Perhaps they can send it out, and if not, you can always sign up for another one. But like I mentioned, we are very honored to work with LTech, and we're glad we can speak to you today.
Great. Thanks again, Eli, and thanks to everyone over at the Better Cloud team. Really